Hi everyone, I'm Pooja-Nansi and I'm here with Vogue Singapore to talk about poetry, hip-hop and Mustafa Center. I think my earliest memory of a book that I read and I remember it just feeling magical was, where is it? Enid Blyton's The Magic Faraway Tree. And I just remember just feeling transported into a different world. I remember just feeling oh, this is incredible. Such an escape and such a place of comfort. So I feel that's my earliest memory of a book that really taught me what reading can do for you. Yeah. I still don't think about myself oh, I'm a writer. I think when people ask me that, I'm oh yeah, I guess I write stuff. But I don't know why the title of writer still feels massive. And I think maybe it always will. And I think because I've grown up reading so many incredible writers, it never quite feels like I belong there. But it always feels I'm kind of working to be in that space. Yeah. I feel at home in poetry. I think because I am someone who looks at moments, or I'm someone who's very much concerned with how things feel, and I think poetry is a more natural medium to do that in versus prose. I'm not really a character-driven writer. So yes, I think I am a poet. I am a poet. Yeah, but it still feels weird to call myself that. But I think for me, the identity that feels most obvious when I'm writing is the rebel in me. Because I think all of my writing on some level is me responding to something that doesn't feel correct. And I just feel those things need to be shouted out, or someone has said you shouldn't say something, which only makes me want to say it more boldly. So I think the part of me that's always front and center when I'm writing is my rebellious self. Mustafa Center Blues. Do you care if they laugh at you? Visit you with the curiosity of a zoo exhibit, armed with a jumbo pack of wet wipes so they can wash you off once the Instagram opportunities are done. I tell you now, we claim you as our own. I wrote this poem in the thick of COVID when Mustafa Center was a kind of super spreader zone. And I think a lot of press coverage around it became kind of racially charged almost, and for me it really got me thinking about how much this space meant to so many groups of immigrants who couldn't return to the spaces that they called home, how much it meant to me, because I referenced being able to smell my grandfather there, which is a really weird thing, to be able to smell someone who's gone. It was really important for me to sort of enshrine this space in poetry, and to give it kind of rightful order. I grew up in a household that was super entrenched in music. My dad loves music, old Bollywood songs, ghazals. And I think when you look at old Bollywood songs or you look at ghazals, they're mostly written by poets. The lyrics were written by Urdu poets. So I think my first introduction to rhyme, meter, repetition, lyrical language was really there, but I never thought of it as poetry, just because poetry was the thing you learn in literature class, right? And then when I went to university, that's when I discovered hip-hop. I went to a club that at the time was called Kilimanjaro's with my friends, and I remember hearing Rum Shaker, which goes all I want to do is get a zoom zoom, right? And I was just thinking what is this? Because it was full rhythm and bass and beat, and everyone was just chanting and dancing, and even then I didn't think of it as poetry. And it was years later, after I had gone through my days in Poetry Slam, when I started reading about hip-hop, and I realized it's a poetic tradition. Once that connection was made, I couldn't unsee it, I couldn't unsee the fact that actually I hadn't learned my poetry in a literature classroom. I had learned it living my life. I had learned it as a child through Bollywood songs. I had learned it in the hip-hop club, because poetry to me is also your whole body feels it and your whole body experiences it. It's not just lines you read from a book. So for me, the two are cannot be separated. Music and poetry are they're the same thing in my world. I think a literary and poetic education is incredibly important, because it's the one thing that fully teaches us what it means to be human. It teaches you how to be really comfortable with discomfort. And I think that's really, really important in a city like Singapore that's obsessed with neat packaging, simple messages, which don't often reflect the truth of who we are. So I think it disrupts things a little bit when people are able to be messy. And I think we need to learn how to be messy and be interesting in our mess. So I think like that's where poetry will find you. I'm really excited about 2024 because there's a host of titles coming out by brown writers. There is one by Anita Dhanabalan, who wrote a beautiful debut YA novel, and her next one is coming out. It's called It Had to Be Her. Vinita Ramani has a book of short stories coming out called The Grand Arcade. Shivram Gopinath, who's one of my favorite performance poets, is coming out with a book of poetry called Day, which is amazing. And then Shreya Davis is coming out with a graphic novel called To the Last Gram. And I think like they're just, like I've loved all of their work and like I'm so excited that they're getting published. So those are some like Singaporean titles I'm very excited about. Thanks for having me, Vogue Singapore. And may your life be blessed with some hip hop today.